Welcome to Wielding Legacy. My name is Payne-Stanley. This podcast is for high achievers, visionaries, creatives, coaches, and consultants. Because the key to unlocking your future lies in legacies. You see, I know you are here creating an impact in your industry. You are here building a legacy for you and your family. And it drives you and it occupies your mind. But through my work as a trusted advisor to extraordinary entrepreneurs, I know you aren't yet reaching your greatest potential in business, your performance, and potentially in relationships. I'm known with my clients for being their loudest cheerleader. I often believe in them even before they do so themselves, and yet you can't enroll me in your legacy limiting story. I'm your biggest empowering challenger as you create your ultimate legacy. This podcast is called Wielding Legacy, because the key to unlocking your future lies in legacies. Welcome, friends, to today's Wielding Legacy episode. And this may be a tough one for some to dive into, because my amazing guest today and fellow TEDx speaker, Chris Williams, is here, and we are discussing suicide, mental health, and depression as you create your legacy.
Because I will talk of the very realistic position that I was in. I was about to catch a train, literally face on. So it's while I say it in a jovial, comedic way sometimes, and that's how I get my story out. The doctor has said this to me, my therapist said this to me, is what he would class my condition to be, and it's a high functioning depressive. So somebody that lives with depression but can still work. I can still get up in the morning. I might not want to end my life every other day, but I still have suicidal thoughts.
This is a beautiful episode that may or may not challenge you, but I assure you that the learnings in this episode with Chris are so plentiful, beautiful, and incredibly important. So, after my introduction, I have to say it is my pleasure, and I say that with a bit of a wry smile if you're watching here on YouTube, to welcome Chris to the podcast today. So, hi there, Chris. Can't wait to get into this conversation with you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. Thank you for inviting me. I don't get invited to many places, so thank you for that.
Well, I want to, before we can get into it, because Chris and I can talk. We can talk and have some really in-depth conversations very quick. So we're just going to dive straight in, Chris.
Okay.
What does legacy mean to you?
Legacy means to me, it's the bit. Legacy is what people talk about when you're not in the room.
Mm.
It's the thing that you leave in people's, I was about to say mouth, but that's wrong. The taste that you give people, the forethought that you give people when you're not around, the memories that you provide people when you're no longer about.
It's a very feeling. I love the feeling of that answer. But you know me, I'm a nosy, curious coach. What do you want people to be saying when you're not in the room anymore? What's that feeling? What's that essence of Chris that you want people to have, or you would love them to have when you're not in the room?
This is a difficult question to answer, because I'm not going to go down the route of I want people to say nice things about me and that sort of stuff. I would rather people not say anything about me. I'm being brutally honest. I would rather people have a sense of, yeah, he was a nice guy and he did good things like that. But I don't really want to have an impact on people's lives. I'm here to live my life. There's only 3 people really that I want to influence, and that's my partner and my kids. That's my role in this short span that we've got as life. Anything extra is a bonus, but I've got no intention of walking into a room and leaving that entire room thinking, oh my God, he was amazing. I'd rather just be honest with myself, not just with other people, but honest with myself. I can walk into a room and think, I don't want to be here. I really dislike you. I don't want to talk to you. I think you're an horrendous person. So why would I want you to have any positive impact on me? At the same time, I could walk into a room and be absolutely awe-inspired by the people that I'm with. The TEDx stage that we shared, that was one of those moments that will go down as being, when you walk into a room, you get that it was one of those moments. But I don't want people to necessarily think I was part of that, if that makes sense. It's the feeling of what people receive, rather than the egotistical pull of that person caused it.
So let me check I'm understanding you right for our listeners. I'm understanding that it's actually not you. You don't want to create a legacy for you. Is that what you're saying? Actually, you want to create, well, you don't necessarily want to, but if you happen to create a legacy because you've been in a place or a space or delivered some work or impacted someone, then that would be a net positive to you.
It would, but that net positive has got to be on the person receiving it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
It's nice to know that you've had a positive impact on somebody. It's nice to feel attracted. It's nice to feel that you've achieved something that you've set out to do. But it's also very self-centered. And I think the idea of legacy is to be as far away from being self-centered as possible. So, and this
is an interesting thing about doing the podcast, because everybody has a different interpretation of legacy. And so far, I think I've said this every episode, no one's definition of legacy is right nor wrong. Yeah. Legacy is completely a feeling, a sense, and we all have such a different interpretation of what this word means and what actually the feelings and the ripple effects come back from legacy.
Yeah.
Now, I know you relatively well, Chris, in a very short amount of time. Chris and I connected. We had a very similar energy. We both kind of curious people. We just have that mindset that goes, I'll ask permission, but I'm going to ask a question. I'm not going to dance around it for half an hour. Now, any of my clients listening to the podcast, they know that about me. That's why you hire me. You don't hire me because you want me to spend half an hour just dancing around something. So you've got on your chest, make a different noise.
Yes.
What you've said to me just now about legacy is not about you. Actually, it's not a do to situation. It's a do with, or once the ripple effects go out, how someone receives the ripples is completely up to them. Okay. Yeah. Now, make a different noise. I'm curious then how that comes about, because to make a different noise is essentially an internal process to begin with before you can make a different noise outwardly, because you have to do something.
Yeah.
So what is make a different noise? Why is make a different noise? Why is it a hashtag? Why is it on your chest? And what in essence does it mean?
The easiest way of saying it is it's a company name.
Okay.
That's the easy get out of
that would be the mic drop. We're done, podcast over, wouldn't it? But that's not,
it. I know go home now. Yeah. The reason, imagine that you're in a restaurant and you're all sat around, you're having a nice meal. And as with all restaurants, depending on how fancy they are, the music and the noise and the tone and the volume, it slowly crescends up into a slightly louder noise when the chefs start making the noise, and then the table who's just coming as a stag do or a hen party, they get a bit louder. So everybody starts talking a bit louder, and everyone's making the same drum noise. If you ever sit back and listen in a restaurant to the noise that's going on, you can almost get a pattern to it. There's almost a beat going on. The same sounds are happening. Now, there's one sound that stops every single thing in its tracks. That's when someone drops glass, or they knock something over, or there's a big smash. Then if you're in the UK, everyone goes, woo! But typically, everyone stops instantly. And that different sound unites everybody for that brief second. And that was the reason why we came up with the name of our marketing company, Make a Different Noise, because we wanted people to understand the impact of good marketing can take everyone's attention from what they're doing instantly, for a second, for 10 seconds, for an hour, whatever it may be. So to bring that back to the legacy narrative that we're talking here, a bit like I said previously, the making of the different noise is the action. The impact that it has is then the legacy. So if you go into a restaurant now, while I use that as a bit of an analogy, it's a bit of a poor analogy, because at the end of the night, it's not the smash that everyone remembers, unless it was a catastrophic smash. They remember the normal noise. They remember the feelings of what they had when they had that nice ragu, or when they've had the nice red wine, or the relationship and the communication, the party that's gone on. That's what they remember. So marketing in itself, and it's difficult to sort of create a bond between legacy and marketing, if I'm being brutally honest, because marketing, while there's two different elements of it, one is being impactful, and two is being something that you build towards. And build loyalty and trust like we do with the brand. Legacy builds off both of those. You can create a legacy from that one smash, but you can also do it through consistent, persistent approach to your actions as well. I don't know if I've answered that question at all.
I think it was a very good,
didn't it? Yeah.
Well, it did. I feel like it was a very good politician's answer. We answered a question. I'm not sure it was the question, but we answered a question, which, I know our listeners will be really interested in the marketing element of this when you create legacy. One of the challenge I've got from what you just said, because there was something that struck me and I always listen to my gut. I'm very much of a gut intuition person. So when something strikes me in my gut, I'm like, right, what just kind of clanged? And one of the things you just said was about marketing and legacy, and actually how the marketing can create the legacy because it's the impact that happens afterwards. The clang that just happened in my stomach as you said that was, actually, I do disagree, because I think you can create legacy in how you market.
Yeah.
I think there is scope in today's world to market in a different way that creates a legacy from the marketing. You've seen it with brands who are trying to make an impact in the world, but commercially it is also a marketing tactic and strategy as such of buy one thing and they donate something to someone else. They are doing it for impact. So you can combine the two. You have to be strategic about it. You have to be in line with your values.
Yeah.
You can't fudge this stuff. You can't faux it. People smell it a mile off.
Yeah.
But you can, if you think differently, make a different noise in your marketing, think about it completely differently, use strategy and legacy combined, especially if you want to do it differently in your industry. If you want to, blow the doors open and do it in a way that no one's ever done it before.
Yeah.
How does that land with you?
I think you've made some very good points. I'm going to use an example. Thursday, the new dating app that's come out. I don't know if you've heard it. They hit the headlines for a number of reasons over the past few weeks. One of them being asking for young creatives to come up with their slogan that they were going to use in the London Tube Underground. But they were doing it for exposure rather than pay. So they got a bit of a beating for that. Whenever we look at a brand and we look at the legacy that brand is doing, a question that I'm going to ask you here, do you think that those people in those brand meetings are focused on the legacy of what the brand's going to be in 10 years' time?
Now, are you asking, do I think they are? Because for me, that's a normalization answer. And I don't work in normalization. So I wouldn't say that I think no one is or everybody is. Do I want to believe that there are brands out there, small and big, and I completely believe with smaller, more agile brands, it's easier. Yeah. But do I believe there are brands out there who lead with impact and legacy and their values? They may have significant profit margins. They may be able to set up a business in a certain way, so they don't have to lead with profit first. Yeah. That can lead with legacy. Hell yes, I believe they're out there. Do I believe it's much more difficult to do that? Yes, because you have to have a business model that allows you to play, in essence. Because legacy at the start of the decision-making process, rather than actually as an offshoot of this would be a great thing, takes courage, it takes play, it does take some play and marketing budget that let's just try this. It doesn't have to have an ROI, but let's just try this and see how it goes. That is only, in a way, a luxury that certain companies can do. And I believe much bigger companies, or actually much smaller ones, are much more agile. Yeah. Because they can adapt quicker. They don't put a campaign out there and go, this isn't working, and actually now we've got to go back through the hierarchy and wind it back. I think they have the ability to be agile and do those things. So I want to believe, and I do believe there are some. I think there could be a lot more. Okay. Now, can I switch beats on you here, Chris?
Okay.
Is there ever a time that you felt like you weren't making a different noise, that you felt like you were the same noise as everybody else, whether in marketing, in business, in anywhere, in any kind of context?
Yes, regularly.
Okay.
I'm not a finished article.
Is anybody?
Far from it. Well, exactly. And I have a real issue. It's a personal issue. It's something I shouldn't give time to. My therapist says so, but I certainly shouldn't give time to this thing that really winds me up, and it's about toxic positivity. And we see it on social media, left, right, and centre. It is constantly we're wading through it when we're looking for information, and it's that isn't life perfect? All you've got to do is slap on a smile and walk out the door and bear that falsehood, that fakery, that image that people are sticking on, the makeup people wear, that they're sticking on to go out to tell the world that their life is perfect, when deep down life isn't about being perfect. Life is about survival. Life is about getting from A to B, A being birth, B being death. There's no written path that we have to be happy all the time. So I have an issue. Anybody that smiles 24/7, they're liars in my head, 100%. We all have those moments where things aren't going well, and as you know, if refer back to my TEDx talk, I lived a life where I put the fake smiles on. I lived a life where for me to be considered successful amongst my peers, I had to prove that I was successful, and a lot of that was being fake. Was buying the nice Armani suits and driving the flashy cars and going to the flashy restaurants and burning credit at a fast rate and all that sort of stuff, because that's what successful people do. And also that's what people do who are on a path to burnout, on a path to, in my position, suicide. So I have a bug to bear with toxic positivity.
But does that stop you now showing up? Or because my question was, is there a time that you ever felt like you didn't make a different noise? So you're saying there was. You said about suicidal thoughts and the path that you were on. Do you mind sharing with our listeners right now what you're actually talking about? Obviously, I know the story, but for people who might have just heard that word and might be actually triggered because they've just heard that word out of context, do you mind sharing?
No, not at all. And the story that I will say, we do need a trigger warning on it, because I will talk of the very realistic position that I was in. I was about to catch a train, literally face on. So it's while I say it in a jovial, comedic way sometimes, and that's how I get my story out, particularly when I'm on stage. It does trigger some people. So yeah, absolutely happy to. I was after a number of years of trying, given a check for £250,000 to go and build a company. I was building that company, and part of the lies I was telling myself was that I had to show that I was professional, show that I was perfect, do all the things that I hadn't yet learned. I was way above my depth, that I could swim at that stage. I'd got a business that was failing. I'd got the financial support that was being pulled away. Loads and loads of different things that were happening. And it got me to the point where I knew I was starting to go down this path of depression. Now, the doctor has said this to me, or my therapist said this to me, is what he would class my condition to be, and it's a high-functioning depressive. So somebody that lives with depression but can still work. I can still get up in the morning. I might not want to end my life every other day, but I still have suicidal thoughts.
Can I just take a beat there?
Yes.
Can I just take a beat there, Chris? Because I think what you've just said may indeed be triggering, and may actually be, some people might be resonating with that right now. Yeah. So I just want to say that if you've heard the term for the first time, high functioning depressive or high functioning with anxiety, it's much like we've heard the term high functioning alcoholic before. That's one society's known.
Yeah.
If anything we're going to say, or Chris is going to say in this next part of this podcast, find a safe space, find a safe person to talk to. So even if you stop this podcast right now, because I'd be out of integrity if I didn't do this right now, then find a safe person, find a safe space, reach out to somebody. But if this isn't for you right now, because for whatever reason you can't listen to the rest of the story, then that's okay. We're talking about legacy. And it's also so strong in legacy to say, I'm not in a place, in a space that I can listen to this story right now, that I can heal from the story right now. So I just wanted to put that out there to our listeners.
And perfectly said. I forget. I've heard the story. I've lived this story so long, so I forget how triggering it can be. So I appreciate you sort of doing the 18 plus adult advisory warning on the chat.
Let's go back into the energy, because I know both of us can use comedy often to soften the edges of tight and kind of very traumatic stories. So you were there, you were struggling. Yeah. There was a conversation in your mind with you and a train.
There was. So so this happened in 2011, 2012. So I'd already been in a very bad position back in 2003 when I left the police force, and it was back in 2003 when I actually was about to make a suicide attempt. But I'll tell you more about that in a second. But this second stage, this second part, when some 9 years later, I recognised those same dark clouds that I'd first seen back in 2003. So I had a decision to make then. Do I continue going down this route of knowing where it was going to end by me potentially having another suicide attempt, or do I try and get out of it? And thankfully, at this time, I had people around me that recognised it. I recognised it and managed to pull myself out of it. But back in 2003, I'd left the police force, or I was in the process of leaving the police force. I wasn't dealing with trauma from losing, or not losing, my dad. But if you do, I explain this far better on my TEDx talk. But my dad and my best friend's dad both had testicular cancer at the same time when we was in year 7 at school, and we used to joke rather sickly as children how bad our dads were. It was almost a game of top trump of how many times our dads have been sick, or how many times we've been to the hospital, how many rounds of chemotherapy have they had this week, that sort of thing. Until one Monday morning, Jonathan didn't turn up for school, and it transpired that his dad died. Mine didn't. Mine survived, and I lived, believe it or not, and I still to this day cannot understand why my head did this, lived with the guilt of my dad not dying, because I now couldn't understand the pain Jonathan was going through, my best mate. And we ended up falling out as friends a little bit because of that, and because of my inability to deal with it, inability to deal with it, his inability to deal with somebody whose dad was surviving, going through that, and the whole world felt very unfair. Now, we were 11, 12-year-old kids. And it wasn't until I was 21, 22, 23, when that sort of started to unveil, and that's when I found myself sat on a railway bridge between Birmingham and Coventry, about to go and catch the train face on. But you asked the question about do I feel that I'm not making a different noise in that? And for me, making a different noise isn't necessarily a life thing we have to live to do. Making a different noise is probably my legacy.
Aha! So we do kind of have a legacy that's
associated with my persona, my being.
Yeah.
And that, so every day I wake up and we have affirmations. We tell ourselves, you're going to do all right today, as you're brushing your teeth and all that sort of stuff. One of the things that I have in my to-do list book and on all my paperwork, I've got stickers all around the house and in the office. make a different noise. It's literally just a little sticker of the make a different noise, the logo that I've got on my shirt, with the onus that, have I made a different noise today? Have I done something today that's made somebody go, oh? Now, it's not important that I make a different noise, but it's important that somebody receives a different sound.
If you're listening to the podcast, I'm beaming, my face just like smiling here, because you're talking about the ripple effect. You're talking about what happens when it leaves you that have had you made a different noise, but actually someone needed to hear a different noise. And this podcast today could be in essence that someone needed to hear a different noise from a different tonality of voice in a different way, using humor, about suicide.
Yeah.
Or someone needed to hear what you just referenced as those dark clouds. They just needed to hear those words that might resonate with them right now. This is why this is a powerful episode, that they realize that they may have some dark clouds. And as I said, go find a safe space, safe place, go and find someone to talk to, or your loved ones. Yeah. They may be able to recognize those dark clouds when you haven't recognized them right now. But even by a loved one hearing this, that impact, Chris, that you've just said may have landed with someone going, do you know what? That person that I love dearly, I do think there's a dark cloud.
Yeah.
Now, this may or may not be a tough question. If you were a loved one right now and you have resonated with what you just said and thought, actually, I think someone that I love has a dark cloud. As someone who's been in the opposite side of that kind of situation, how would you have wanted or needed, or maybe your loved ones did, approach you and say, I think you've got a dark cloud? How can you do that in a way with love and grace from your kind of side of this story?
Yeah. One of the questions I was asked, which totally threw me, and this was from a new acquaintance. I've never met them before. And I'll forever be grateful for them saying this question. I didn't answer it honestly at the time, because I was too blown away. I was too self-concerned with in my own little cocoon. But we met and we were going go-karting. It was somebody's stag do. And he goes, "How you diddling?" And I was like, "Sorry, what?" He says, How you doing? You all right?" I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I went, what does diddling mean? He goes, "Oh, what's going on?" It's just a bit of, and it was the fact that they phrased something that I got a ready answer for all the time differently, which made me go, huh? Now, when I explained this to, or when my therapist pulled it out of me through CBT and that sort of stuff, and realised that was one of a moment, he says, "What questions would you ask your partner if you wanted to make sure that she was okay?"
Beautiful question.
And it took me about 2 weeks to answer it. I didn't know. I did not know the answer. And when we discussed it with him, and I said, this is one of those questions where there isn't a right or wrong answer, is there? And he was like, "Well, that's for you to decide." I was like, "You bloody therapist." But so for me, if you believe that a loved one, a friend, somebody you work with, it has that black cloud over them, ask them about specific things which make you think they have a black cloud. For example, it might be, they used to come out to the pub with you every Friday and they've stopped doing it now. Ask them, well, is everything going on all right at home? Because you don't seem to be coming out anymore. Ask them specific things as to why you are concerned.
And the specific things, the specific things that you've noticed.
Yes.
The specific things that are relevant to your relationship with them that you know has changed.
Yeah. Because that it's going to do one of two things to somebody, depending on what stage they are during their depression. It's going to push them into a bit further a hole, and they'll try and hide it more. In which case, you'll see more things that are starting to change in their behaviours and their patterns, or there's a good chance you'll break them. And I don't mean that in a horrible way. I mean that in a way of them going, you know what, things are a bit shit at the moment. The second somebody says things aren't good, do not under any circumstance, say, oh, I thought so. Because that instantly puts a barrier back up.
Yeah. And this, I was about to say that one of the things from a coaching world, and when we're talking about legacy, bear in mind that if people have a legacy that they're still holding on to in their mind, and their perception of anxiety or depression doesn't fit into the legacy they're trying to build, they will have built coping mechanisms. Yeah. Because it's incredibly important that no one sees behind this shield to the legacy they're trying to build, whether that is successful, however that might look like to you. And I'm going to say this right now. If you want the flash cars that Chris was saying, if you want all those things, there's never a right or wrong on this podcast. We create exactly the life that we want. And when you said about don't say I knew, because actually, are you asking for yourself or are you asking to help somebody? Are you asking because you want to be the savior, or are you asking from a point of integrity because actually you're worried about a friend or a loved one?
Yeah. One of the best questions you can ask once somebody admits to you that there might be something wrong, that something's not quite firing on all cylinders, is ask them if they've got somebody to talk to about it. Yeah. Ask for who that is. What's their name?
This has been such a powerful episode, Chris. But I want to ask you, when it comes to your legacy and the legacy that you are building, you mentioned for your partner and your children, and the ripple impact. I think I'm going to label yours the ripple impact legacy that you're building. That's what's going to be called in my head. What are your 3 non-negotiables when building legacy?
So you sent the email out, and we spoke about this previously, about this question. So I've been sat there and it says, have them in your mind, think about them. And I've only got one. You're going to go with what? And the reason why, because when you try and put something in an order, when you try and say, well, this is important, this is important, this is important, for me, there is only one thing that is unbelievably important when it comes to the thing I want to leave, and it's honesty. If anyone was to say anything about me, and this, it's from going back to the start of the interview, I said this is not something that I particularly want to happen, but the word honesty would be the one thing I'd like, in terms of how I treat people, in terms of what I portray, how I talk to people. I want somebody to know that, what the words that I say, I mean. And I don't know whether that is a legacy. I don't know whether that's something that is part of the ripple effect.
Now, I'm going to say this I want to say to our listeners, you will know, depends how many of season 2 that you've already listened to. The honesty is actually one of the most frequent answers to this question.
Yeah.
So if you haven't watched or listened to any of the other episodes in season 2, go and listen to them too, because it's interesting to see how people are getting to honesty as one of their 3 non-negotiables. Chris, it's been such a pleasure having you here today. I know you and me could talk for a long time about many different things because we are just that ever curious mind. But thank you so much for being on Wielding Legacy podcast.
It's been fun. Thank you.
It has been said that with a big enough lever, you can move the world. I've spent my life figuring out how to use that lever to move my own world. And in doing so, I help extraordinary entrepreneurs do exactly the same for themselves. So I want to offer you a perspective on what gives you the greatest leverage in your life to create wealth, health, and happiness. It's called legacy. And the lever to your legacy is within your reach. If you'd love to know more about this, go to laurapaynestanley.com/legacy.